Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 19th of May, 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson, and joining me, I'm delighted to say, is Vanessa Beeley from 21st Century Wire. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be here.
This is a follow-up to the interview we did over Skype last November on the white helmets, and there is Mr. Le Mesurier. Is he still involved with them?
Yeah, we actually thought he'd disappeared off the scene. In fact, as soon as the Russians started bombing in September 2015, he kind of disappeared off Facebook and Twitter. And then he's reappeared in the photographs of the Support for Syria conference that was held in the UK in London in 2016, February 2016. So we assume he's still involved.
Right, and just to remind everybody, or for anybody that's approaching this subject for the first time, the White Helmets are a first responder group in Syria, or at least that's how they present themselves.
Yeah, they present themselves very much as first responders, saviours of all humanity on the ground in Syria, digging bodies from the rubble. I mean, that's their tagline.
Yeah. Now, yesterday we highlighted this press release from back in February from the London Fire Brigade that they were providing equipment to the White Helmets and helping to save lives in Syria. And they highlighted a gentleman called Raed Saleh and the UK Foreign Office. UK Against Daesh is a Foreign Office Twitter account. They tweeted out this image of Mr. Saleh with, I believe this is the Deputy Commissioner of the Fire...
The Assistant Commissioner of the London Fire Brigade, yeah.
Right. They are saying that they have helped save over 50,000 lives so far in Syria. Well, we'll come on to that in a second. But we wanted to ask the London Fire Brigade about this. We mentioned this yesterday. So I called them, followed up with an email. Really what they said in response can be summed up as follows. The visit was facilitated by the Foreign Office. Any questions need to go to them, really. You have asked were we aware of any connection, and that's any connection to Al-Nusra Front. I don't think we were aware of any connection. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't or anything like that, but I don't think we're aware of any connection. And then the spokesman went on to say it was the Foreign Office which facilitated the visit, and they're still working with that organisation. And later on in the conversation said the Foreign Office organised the visit. It was the Foreign Office which was facilitating the photo call. So now it's being described as a photo call. So, you know, that is absolutely a PR term. Yeah. So,
also an extraordinary conversation in the sense that they're saying, I don't think we're aware of any connection. I mean, that's not a flat-out denial of any connection to Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda.
No, and indeed, I was asking the representative, could I have a formal statement from the fire service, because his comments were all, I think, possibly, maybe. Yeah, and I was wanting a formal statement, but they weren't prepared to do that. They wanted us to go to the Foreign Office. But nonetheless, it was the Fire Brigade that were having their photographs taken. But the other reason, of course, we want to discuss this now is because there is a campaign running to get a nomination for the White Helmets to the Nobel Peace Prize. And this is being run by the French contingent of the Nobel Committee.
It's actually being run by the entire NGO cabal. So it's being backed by, I think that campaign image was produced by the Syria campaign, which is, of course, one of the Soros-backed NGOs that are working, Soros and USAID-backed NGOs that are working on the ground in Syria to promote the anti-Syria campaign. But this was actually launched on Twitter, I believe, by MoveOn.org, which is the Democratic Party organisation that was founded to sort of move people on from Clinton's scandals. So it has quite a lot of power behind the campaign, actually, as regards organisations that are behind it. But yes, it's the French committee that have actually set up the Change.org petition.
Okay, well, let's just remind ourselves of the various funding streams and connections that the White Helmets have. James Le Mesurier there. Tell us about some of the other.
Sure. Well, we have to first of all understand that the White Helmets describe themselves very categorically and unequivocally as a non-governmental organisation without any, not any government funding, but also without any funding from any parties involved in the conflict in Syria, and that's very clearly stated on their website. However, when we look into their funding, both the United States State Department has admitted that they fund to the tune of $23 million via USAID, United States Aid Development Agency. And then the UK Foreign Office is actually the primary funder, which was reported in the Telegraph last year, funding up to £19 million to the White Helmets. If we then look at, do you want me to run through the organisation
just in
very
a couple
quickly?
of seconds, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at James Le Mesurier, British mercenary in the British Army until 2000, background in all of the NATO intervention zones. And then he has links going back through the Olive Group to Blackwater Academy, which is Blackwater, known mercenary group. He's also now working with Richard A. Clarke, Bush's terror advisor, who has connections to Rita Katz, US Israeli agent who set up SITE, that distributes the ISIS execution videos. And if we then look at, obviously, Raed Saleh, just very quickly going back to him because we've mentioned him.
That's the gent at the top of that,
yeah.
yes.
We've mentioned him in conjunction with the London Fire Brigade, and it's him being photographed with the Assistant Commissioner. Raed Saleh was recently deported from Dulles Airport in America, and after really being interrogated by Matt Lee of Associated Press, Mark Toner of the US State Department finally admitted that Raed Saleh was deported because of his extremist connections. So that's why it's very important that we discover why on earth the London Fire Brigade has been associating with him.
Okay, well, let's just have a look through the White Helmets, what they say about themselves. This is their logo, and pay attention to that because we're going to see that on a number of images over the next few minutes. But this is how they describe themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this you will see in almost every report that is produced about the White Helmets, which shows that it's a sort of it's a marketing ploy. I mean, they claim that they're ordinary people, so the bakers, tailors, engineers, pharmacists, painters, carpenters, students. This phrase will be put into every single promotional article. They basically claim to be there to save all of humanity, regardless of their background. It's the soul that they save, and for humanity, solidarity, impartiality.
Right. Indeed. So this is all from their website. When I want to save someone's life, I don't care if he's an enemy or a friend. What concerns me is the soul that might die. They're invested in life. They say the White Helmets mostly deal with the aftermath of government air attacks, yet they've risked sniper fire to rescue bodies of government soldiers and give them a proper burial. They say they're unarmed and neutral. They say they're from the people and for the people. And of course, as you pointed out over the last couple of days, they say that they have women and, in fact, children amongst their ranks.
Yeah, I mean, the children campaign was a little bit like their the kitten campaign for the FSA, the Free Syrian Army. It's to sort of cuddlify the White Helmet image, and again, it's a classic promotional ploy.
Well, you spoke about cats, and here we go.
Here's the fluff factor.
So, I mean, that's really taking advantage of this craze for kittens on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And they tap into that all the time. You'll see videos of the White Helmets in their spare time feeding kittens. You'll see there's one video where he's caught gun toting, and the next shot is of him feeding a kitten. So it's kind of humorous, but on the other hand, it's very good marketing. Right.
Okay. Now they said that they're there to worry about the souls that may die. But there was a video clip came out which had this gentleman from the White Helmets discussing what happens with Syrian government forces when they find them.
Yeah, absolutely. He made the very clear demarcation between collecting the bodies of their own operatives and people living in the al-Nusra held areas to when they find the Syrian Arab army bodies, which they describe as shabiha, which is a derogatory term for the Syrian Arab Army, and they throw them in the trash. He also then went on to swear his allegiance to the Mujahideen as well, which is the terrorist groups in Syria.
Yes.
Very clearly, he was seen on video saying that.
Now, I'm just going to say before we move on that there are going to be some quite distressing images coming up here and video clips. So I just want to give that warning beforehand. Unfortunately, we can't really deal with this subject without looking at this stuff. So I'm just going to apologize for that now and say if you're worried about that, it's probably better not to continue. But so we have a video clip here of how these people are dealt with. These are Syrian government forces in the back of the truck.
These are Syrian Arab Army forces. And as you can see, I mean, they've been given none of the respect that the White Helmets claim that they give them. They've been dumped in a truck, their boots have been taken off and probably reused. And then you have White Helmet operatives that claim to be first responders, humanitarians, stood on top of these bodies flicking a Victory V, which certainly doesn't adhere to their impartiality claims.
Right. And then they're not impartial here.
They're very far from impartial. I mean, we can prove this time and time again, but here it's a very clear case of sectarianism. Here, the two White Helmet operatives in the front of this crowd are holding up banners calling for the burning and devastation of two Idlib villages, Kafraya and Fur, that have been under Ara al-Sham, which is another terrorist faction in Syria. They've been under siege by these terrorists since 2011, full siege since 2015. Over 1,700 Syrian civilians have been shelled, massacred by these terrorists, and here you have the White Helmets supporting them and actually calling for the killing, for the murdering, for the massacre of these civilians. Why? Although I don't like to uphold the Sunni Shia narrative, the reason that they are calling for their devastation is because these villages are Shia villages. Okay,
now if we look at that image just quickly, once again, we need to take note of the two gentlemen at the front, and particularly the guy on the right-hand side there has got the beige jacket with the blue flashes on the elbow, on the shoulder. Sorry, and this is the White Helmet uniform. Okay, so we're going to see that again shortly. Now, of course, these guys are unarmed, but here's an example of a White Helmet. Now, he's not wearing the uniform at the moment, but he's quite clearly armed.
Yeah, he's armed and he's stood on top of an al-Nusra tank.
So the gent that we're particularly interested in is the guy on the right.
Yeah.
And we're going to see another video clip here. And this time we're going to see this same guy, who's the guy with the yellow jacket, the high-vis jacket on the left-hand side. And that's the same guy this time wearing White Helmets.
Well, he's with another White Helmet guy that you'll see in the photograph that comes up next. But just to identify him, that group is al-Nusra. You can see the al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda, flags in the background.
Right. This is the guy
on the left.
Yes. And how do you pronounce his name?
Muwaya Hassan Aga. I could have got the first one wrong.
Okay, and here he is again. Only this time he's taking two Syrian army guys off to their deaths.
Well, I mean, we do actually have the video of this execution, but to be honest, it's such a distressing video, and for the family to watch these two soldiers were captured by al-Nusra. They were paraded in the streets. They were publicly humiliated, publicly tortured, and then they were publicly executed. They were humiliated in the sense that you can see that they look pretty shaken and scared in this. And they were basically told, well, you're apostates, which is, they were saying, you're fighting alongside your Shia brothers. So again, we're seeing this demonstration of pure sectarianism. And I do want to make the point, when this photo was released on Twitter, I was sent a tweet by somebody who told me that Raed Saleh, who, by the way, has just been deported from the US for his extremist connections, had sacked Muwaya from the White Helmets. Now, I have pressed and pushed for an official press statement from them, bearing in mind that they make it very clear that they will condemn any human rights violation. And yet here we have not one, but as we'll see, more than one white helmet participating in an execution.
Right. So this is the gentleman again, and this is his Facebook page, and that is actually a still from the execution video.
Yeah. As I say, it's way too distressing.
And that video he posted on his, Facebook page.
Yes. And he didn't just post it, he posted it with celebratory comments which were responded to by other white helmet operatives.
So clearly they deserve a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, makes sense.
And also in the car at the time with these two guys was this guy. Now you've had it confirmed that this is the same.
I've had it confirmed. I mean, we don't have an actual identification in the sense of the name, but a number of people have based in Syria, and they have said it is the same guy.
Right.
Certainly, he looks very, very similar, and so that would prove that even if they had sacked this other guy, they can't sack all of them that are participating in sectarian and deliberate violence against Syrian civilians.
Okay. Now the next video clip is from an execution. I'm beginning the clip after the deed has been done, but nonetheless it's still quite distressing, so I just want to make that clear once again. So in this one, the assassin is just, or the executioner is just leaving the body, and clearly, as we're about to see, the white helmets were there at the scene, because here they come in their white helmet uniforms, and you can quite clearly see the white helmet logos on their backs, and they are there following an execution to clear up the mess.
Absolutely. And in fact, if you look at the timeline on this, they arrived quite a few minutes before the execution took place. So, you know, am I alone in finding it a little bit odd that first responders, humanitarians, non-government funded organisation like this is invited by al-Nusra to an execution, stands by, watches the execution, and then just moves in and takes the body away. And there was no official statement. Again, although they claim that they will protest any human rights violations, there was never an official statement from the White Helmets to protest this execution and many other executions that are carried out, public executions that have been carried out by al-Nusra.
So they clearly deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. Let's move on. Another one. Well, this is actually about the guy holding the microphone, Abu Omar al-Suri, and he is a nice gentleman, as can be seen in image selfies that he likes to take. Yeah,
and basically what I had that translated this morning, what he's actually doing, he's taking this photograph, and he describes it as something to show the horde, Kinana Alouche, who's a government media journalist in Syria. And it's a direct threat.
He's calling her a whore?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this gent is, in fact, a journalist and seems to do lots of interviews and so on.
Yeah, he does. I mean, here he is interviewing one of the White Helmet leaders. And you'll notice the logos in the background, and also the Free Syrian Army flag, the sort of terrorist flag in the background.
With the 3 stars?
Yeah.
Yes. So again, White Helmets absolutely happy to associate themselves with terrorism.
With somebody that has just paraded in front, taken a selfie in front of a Syrian Arab Army massacre and celebrated it.
And who is interviewing here?
Well, if we actually go to the YouTube channel of a guy called Sheikh Abdullah al-Muhassini. Muhassini is a Riyadh-funded cleric, basically, who has appointed himself the judge and the head of Jaish al-Fatah, which is the army of conquest, which comprises Awda al-Sham and al-Nusra. Yeah. So this guy is probably one of the most powerful beheaders, executors, crucifiers. He trains child suicide bombers. I mean, he's probably one of the most sort of evil powerful, heavily funded. If there's a program that the terrorists are trying to push through, like for instance Madaya, it was Muhasini that called for that and called for funds to come in. He's raised millions for the war against Syria.
And this is the same guy.
Yeah, and here he is again celebrating the massacre of Syrian Arab army soldiers.
But getting back to the journalist, then he, continues to interview more white helmets.
Yeah, I mean we've seen at least 2 interviews with white helmets, recent ones. And here in this interview, I've been told that basically what the white helmet is saying, yes, he's reiterating what we do is so dangerous, we take such risks, we're so impartial, we're neutral, we save everybody. It's repeating this tagline, this promotional line that they have. And yet he's talking to somebody who is fundamentally the press officer for the head of the terrorist organizations in Syria. So I find that very hard to understand why he can be laying a claim to being impartial when he's talking to somebody like this.
But they deserve a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yep.
We're going to keep pushing this. Now, of course, it is the British Foreign Office which is providing the lion's share of the funding for this. Our people in Syria is their hashtag. And they're working to strengthen the moderate opposition. But I think we've demonstrated there's nothing terribly moderate about them.
Moderate executioners, I think we should put in there.
And just to make sure that we understand what we're talking about here, £19 million. Now, £19 million on the greater scheme of things may not seem like a huge amount of money, but
£19 million of taxpayers' money that is basically going to fund a terrorist organisation under a humanitarian banner.
Right, exactly. Well, that's exactly the point.
We can't put it any clearer.
And here is, another key point to make, because this collage here shows that so many Twitter accounts linked to the white helmets also have ISIS and al-Nusra flags attached.
We did. I'm very lucky. I had somebody that did a lot of amazing work for me, and basically they went through a lot of the white helmet accounts, and they picked out the fact that they follow, in the main, ISIS and al-Nusra accounts on Twitter. Very little else, and some Saudi accounts. Of course, Saudi is one of the financial backers of the war against Syria.
Backed by the United States to the tune of $23 million. And so that's not quite as much as the Foreign Office, but it's pretty much
I would also say that these are probably conservative figures because they're probably not taking into account the equipment that is being supplied as well, the equipment and the arms that are being pushed through from the Turkish border, particularly into Aleppo.
And they're quite happy, again, holding Free Syrian Army flags and so on. They're quite happy to be demonstrating with al-Nusra.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And funded to the tune of €4 million.
Yeah, this is fairly
Holland.
recent, and there has actually been quite a backlash against that by the Dutch media.
Okay, but they deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. So, look, Vanessa, this has been a pretty short news program today, but really the point we're trying to make here, we want to make a short, sharp point.
Yeah.
This organisation is not the humanitarian organisation that is presented by the media and by its own PR.
Not at all.
And we are paying for it.
Absolutely, we are paying for it, but also the Syrian people are paying with their lives. For every time that we support this organisation, we are actually bringing about greater devastation in Syria, greater bloodshed. We have to understand, for instance, in Aleppo, that these guys are embedded with al-Nusra in the east of Aleppo, who are firing on a daily basis into the western sectors, which holds over 90% of Aleppo's citizens in government-held areas. And they're firing hell cannon canisters, which are gas canisters filled with explosives, glass, nails, any form of shrapnel, and chemicals. We have to remember that al-Nusra took over the chemical factories in Aleppo, and recently these hell cannon have been fired into the Kurdish areas, Sheikh Maqsood areas, containing chemicals. So actually, this is a very important message. While we support this organization, which is supported by our government, using our money to do it, we're prolonging the suffering of the Syrian people. And that's I can't make that point more strongly. These are not humanitarians. They are terrorists.
Now, just to clarify something you've just said there, if I'm in the west of Aleppo and I'm in the government-held areas, and one of these weapons is fired at me, lands close to me, and I end up with a wall falling down on top of me, I'm not going to find a white helmet coming as first response.
Absolutely not. No.
So the only way I'm going to get a white helmet responding to an event is if I'm in ISIS territory or
ISIS or al-Nusra
territory.
Yeah, and they are also embedded in ISIS areas. That was also admitted by the Telegraph after we mentioned it in one of our articles on 21st Century Wire.
Okay, so what needs to be done at this point?
Well, I mean, I think the really important thing, one, there is a petition that we've put up in competition with the one on change.org that is calling for the Nobel Peace Prize for the White Helmets. We've actually put up a counter petition, do not give the Nobel Peace Prize to the Syria White Helmets. Please go and sign it. Your signatures do make a difference. We're at the top of the Google search at the moment, so obviously we are gaining traction against them. There is a definite ramping up of propaganda to promote the Nobel Peace Prize at the moment, quite possibly because we're getting to the deadline for nominations. So please, please, please go and sign. Please boycott these operations. Please raise awareness about their identity, the fact that they are not the humanitarian organisation they purport to be. Raising awareness is very important. A lot of people have been duped by this organisation. The marketing, the power of the marketing apparatus behind them is massive. There's millions of dollars. So although they've been given funding, direct funding, there's also a huge amount of finance behind this operation and behind the marketing campaign of this operation. So, you know, we need to be powerful in our voices, in our education of those people that are not aware of this, and boycotting the organisations that are supporting them. Amnesty International, Avaaz, Human Rights Watch. Basically, wherever you see it, just try and contradict it as to the best of your ability.
Now, somebody in the chat box has asked what to search for. If you just type in Nobel and white helmets, it's 3 separate words. You'll find the petition, I think, is the second link underneath the 21st Century Wire link. And the other thing that people can do, of course, is to share this report and also share the report that we did from the 3rd of November last year. This will be on YouTube shortly. It's on Facebook now. So if you're on Facebook, if you want to go to the UK Column Facebook page, you can share it from there. And perhaps also start asking some pretty serious questions from your MPs.
Absolutely, yeah, and we're going to be pursuing with the London Fire Brigade and contacting the Foreign Office, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for joining me and us. We will be back at 1 o'clock as usual tomorrow. David Scott can't join us this week, unfortunately, so we'll have Mark Anderson, I believe. So hope to see you then. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.